2000. After a decade of work, rival scientific teams complete the first rough map of the human genetic code. Michael Morgan is with the Wellcome Trust Genome Campus.
We all are related very, very closely to one another. There are more differences in an ethnic group than there are between ethnic groups, at least at the level of DNA.
This Day in History is sponsored by Mecum Law in Gulfport.